And coming back on the show, we have Brenden Fletcher. He's here to talk about the first volume of Isola, out in comic book stores everywhere on Wednesday, October 24th, and in book stores the day before Halloween, October 30th. Brenden, thanks again for coming on.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.
So, having read, the first volume now, it's clear that you and Carl were really crafting like this love letter to the entire fantasy genre. Dare I say, all the 80s animated films and the Miyazaki that you guys had grown up. Was that something that had, and this is something you had been sitting on for decades, ever since high school. Was that something that you were very conscious of as you were kind of crafting the story with Carl?
I think it went through, a ton of different permutations through the years. When it started, I'll tell you, I don't think we've ever talked about this, but the very initial starting point was a zombie story. So the strange genesis of this thing that has become Isola began with the desire to do a zombie story before anyone was doing zombie stories. I had a roommate that was into zombie movies.
Yeah, it was just Romero at that point.
No, it was the Lucio Fulci stuff. It was like the
Italian.
Yeah, it's the Italian stuff. Zombie 2, or Zombie Flesh Eaters, as it's known elsewhere. Anyways, the more we worked on it, the more it became something sincere, and the further we drove it from the notion of doing something about zombies. And that project is something we worked on for almost a decade, off and on. And we just weren't at a point in our lives where we could make a self-published book work. And we had talked to Dark Horse, we had talked to Image, everyone was interested. We just couldn't bring it home. We both had other jobs. Carl was drawing superhero books. I was a performer professionally. And we couldn't juggle it. We couldn't make it happen. We were too young and irresponsible. And when it was time to come back and do the creator-owned thing together, we still wanted to do something in the spirit of the project that we had left behind all those years before, but we didn't want to revisit that exact project. So we've kind of cherry-picked elements from that thing, and they've carried over. And it feels like so many aspects of what we're doing now have carried over from that project from the 90s. And yeah, part of it was, or is, I guess, a love letter to those things that we loved from our youth. But the Miyazaki stuff, the Ghibli movie stuff, is the most... I think we really wear that on our sleeves, and we talk about it a lot. Because it's not just important in the tone that we're trying to strike, the style of storytelling that we're working in, but, you can see it in the way that Carl is approaching design work sometimes.
The layered kind of animation style.
Yeah, not even the fact that it's sort of an animation style, but right down to the way he's choosing to design some of the clothing. Rook's helmet, for instance, I see as much Miyazaki and Mobius as Carl in that.
There's a lot of Mononoke in there, right?
There is a lot of Mononoke. There's a lot of Nausicaa in it. I can feel some Laputa. Totoro is my favorite movie of all time.
I love the 12-legged cat bus.
The best. The absolute best. I could just run down the list of all of the Miyazaki films. I think there's a little piece of everything in there. Maybe in a little bit of Ponyo.
But yeah, so with characters like Rook and Princess Olwen, those permutations of that. Also, and I don't want to make this sound like a derivative question, but in all of your work, including your mainstream licensed work, there are these strong female characters. You see it in Gotham Academy, you see it in Motor Crush, certainly, and you see it here. Was that always something that was in the DNA, or what is kind of attracts you to creating those kind of protagonists?
Yeah, that's a complicated question for me to answer. It's something I feel like I have to do a lot of soul-searching about, because it wasn't a choice. Initially, I guess it was a choice. Carl and I chose to create a story about two young women all those years ago, and those characters that we created then informed Olive and Maps in Gotham Academy. But that was also, part of Becky's choice. So we were all in agreement on that. But then taking on a book like Batgirl or Black Canary, I mean, I didn't have a choice there. That was imposed upon me. And I was happy to
It wouldn't
have
be
that.
Batgirl anymore.
Exactly. But I made specific choices to make those books
Authentic?
to fill the casts out in a very specific way. In the case of Batgirl, one of the things that bothered me about the character, the Barbara Gordon character, as she's traditionally been portrayed, is that her story is so dependent on all of the men in her life. And I wanted to do something that established who she is outside of being the daughter of the commissioner of the Gotham City Police Force, being the sometimes partner of the Dark Knight of Gotham City, and fighting his rogues gallery, and being the girlfriend of Nightwing or Robin. Like, she was always just defined by these dudes, and that sucks. Part of the reason that we came up with Burnside was to give her space from all these guys and to give her a chance to build her own thing.
And then with Motor Crush.
I mean, yeah, Motor Crush was an extension of that in a lot of ways.
Right down to the creative team.
Right, exactly. But I do prefer writing female characters. I think about it all the time. Like, yeah, I could take over Green Arrow. I can do that. But honestly, like, if I think about writing a run on Green Arrow, I know that's going to turn into another Black Canary book. Like, I already know that.
She's the cooler character.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is for me that makes... I'm not a macho guy, and I don't identify with those sorts of portrayals of masculinity. And I think what I've said recently is that it's exciting now for me to think about writing a book about a dude, because that's something, because I've been...
It's a challenge.
Well, no, but because I've been asked this a few times now, I've started to really think about it, and now I want to do it, but I want to do it from that perspective. I think I've just always been afraid of it, because I'm always feeling like I've got to write, like Superman from the traditional sort of...
archetype perspective.
Male perspective, which is, I don't think it's mine. I don't think I identify with that. And but I think I could actually do a really different Superman book as a result of starting to feel comfortable with my angle on it. Now, the thing is, I would just have to convince, in this case, sure, DC to let me do my take on it, which, might not be what they want to do. But anyways, all that to say...
Yeah.
Yes,
Isola
I like writing female characters, but I think maybe it's time for me to give a shot to writing something else.
Well, hopefully I didn't upset the apple cart there.
No, not at all. It's something that's been fascinating to me, because I didn't even realize this was happening until like a year ago, and I started getting asked about it, and then I had to sort of get all introspective and wonder why this is happening. And
because, at its core, Isola is like a love story, right?
It is, yes.
Between and the reason I was asking is because, again, this is something that's existed since the 90s. I was always wondering if that was something in the DNA, that emotional core to it all, especially with Rook and Olwen and all that.
I think the subtext of the original book is here in the new series. I think we're playing out the story a lot more on the surface than we had ever intended to in the original. And I don't want to spoil anything, but yeah, there are similarities, but I think we're more upfront about everything.
Yeah.
I think we're more upfront about the emotional content in Isola than we were in our old proposals.
Well, you had grown. You had experienced more emotions and matured into your own emotional arcs since the 90s.
Sure, yeah. I think we just realized that that's what's important to us. And the old work was, it was work by 20-year-old guys who are fresh out of well, I guess we were still in college. We had a lot of cool guy stuff in it. We had a lot of cool ships and like
Zombies,
these zombie
apparently.
guys, and there was a guy from space. I mean, there was all sorts of weird stuff. It was a lot more action oriented.
I mean, don't sell it short. There's still like man-eating wolves, in this one.
Well, there's more weird stuff to come into the second arc.
Where do you see the second arc? We've seen the origins of the curse and everything by the, without going into the specifics and without giving the game away. Where do you see the second arc really going and really exploring?
Well, there's a few important things that the second arc will accomplish, but without trying to spoil it, or without allowing myself to spoil it, the most important part is where we get to at the end of the second arc. So this is an arc that encompasses another chunk of the journey that's maybe about the same as the first. We travel about the same distance, or Rook and Olwen travel the same distance, and some of the emotional journey that they, some of the achievements that they made in the first arc there's a threat to undo them through this arc.
Yeah.
But geographically, we get them to a place that's very important, and you'll understand why by the end of the second arc.
Right.
And that all leads up to a very important third arc that, I mean, not to sell arc 2 short.
Yeah.
Volume 2 is going to be great, but we're really pumped about getting to Volume 3 because there's stuff that we have set up, designs that Carl's done, stuff that you've already seen, especially if you've read the prologue story that originally appeared in the back of Motor Crush. We really begin to pay that off in a big way.
Yeah, I mean, though at the same time you've got all these you've got dead cities, you've got the very lush forests, and kind of like really like psychedelic swamps. Are we going to see like that psychedelia kind of ramp up as the story continues?
In a way, but you're definitely going to see different types of locations. It's one of Carl's focuses.
Foci?
Yeah. Foci?
Yeah, because it's an FOCI, I think.
One of the things that Carl is looking at is drawing different landscapes more often and finding new ways to approach the geography. If you've paid attention to the non-story stuff in the book and on the covers, you'll notice there's a map. And the map is important. And you can actually look at the map and trace the journey of Rook and Olwen. And we've done that, so we could show you on the map where they're going, and you can imagine how different that's going to look.
Right, almost like Tolkien-esque in a way, where he would always have that map in the front cover. It's like, here's the Mines of Moria. And yeah.
Exactly.
Now,
so you're going to see different stuff.
Sure, yeah, absolutely, as you can track their journey. Now, this is going to come off as a completely left field question, but it's been on my mind since the first time you guys were on the show. Totally left field. Now as I'm mulling over it, what is it about Dracula? Why are you so hung up on Dracula?
That's just me, I think. And if Carl has any kind of love for Dracula, I think I could blame myself. I think, and this is, I've again had to sort of go deep and really think back into my past, as this has come up in my later years. I think it was because there was a show on in Canada when I was really young, filmed very near where I grew up. It's called The Hilarious House of Frightenstein, and it was a kids show. It was a comedy with all of the sort of iconic Universal monsters, and they famously flew in Vincent Price to do like a couple days of shooting, and they just shot all this material with him and they cut it into every single episode.
Yeah.
And it's like a skit show. It's like a comedy skit show with different horror characters. And I think I got hooked on this when I was really
horror,
young.
like Muppet show.
Kind of, but with human Muppets. I think I had to be like 3 or 4 or something, because by the time I was 5 years old, or so the story goes that my mom tells, she would wake me up at midnight to watch CBC's airing of the original Universal Monster films, and the one that hooked me the most was Dracula, the old Bela Lugosi Dracula from 1931.
Is he still for you over like Christopher Lee and all that?
Oh, this is a whole separate podcast. Bela's important to me because that's
the gateway.
That's how I got hooked. But Christopher Lee is maybe more important. He played the character a lot more. He certainly knew more about Stoker and had a greater appreciation for the text.
He's the more sinister Dracula.
Yeah, he's sinister. There's blood. It's in color. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah. I was just curious because I remember that was a big deal the first time you came on the show.
It's a huge deal. I mean, I am right now curating my Halloween viewing list, and this is something I'm sending out to a select group of friends with a bunch of dates and inviting them to come over and watch. I once living in Montreal, I curated an entire Dracula film festival. It was a week, and every night there would be a minimum of 2 Dracula movies, and it was curated by theme, and I would give a little talk in between the movies.
Very TCM.
It was, and it was actually fairly well attended. But I don't think any Dracula movie is perfect. I don't even think the book is perfect, although, I mean, it's the thing that started it all.
Sure.
But every version has something wonderful about it, and I have a great appreciation for this. I have a great appreciation that as we move forward in time, it continues to evolve and change with us.
It's timeless, right?
Yeah, I love it.
So, what do you hope endures to that point? And this is where I put on my big fancy... What points do you hope endure about Isola and Motor Crush? What are the big timeless things where you're like, this is why these books matter. Why these books, like Dracula, should be on the shelves.
I mean, I hope this doesn't seem like a cop-out, but I feel like that's for somebody else to decide. I don't think that Bram Stoker could have ever looked at that book when he was writing it or after he'd finished writing it and say, nah, this is a classic. This is going to be timeless. I mean, I think from what I understand, he probably just wanted to impress that guy that was running his theater that was his boss.
Yeah.
That cranky old dude that he sort of based the Dracula character on.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, part of it is there's a real joy for me just working with my friends.
Because you tend to keep the same creative teams.
Yeah, but these are my friends. Right. It's crazy. We get to do these things together and like kind of sort of make a living off of it. And what a dream job. That's incredible. And I'm proud of the work. I think the work will hold up, especially like Isola, I think is done in a way with an eye towards being timeless. Sure. Anyways, like I don't know that anything will be iconic or I don't know how people will feel about it in the future, but hopefully it will stand the test of time and not feel dated. I think Motor Crush is more of the moment. So I don't know how that'll be viewed in a decade or in 100 years or that anyone will care, but I think we just have to, we're just trying stuff out. We're just putting a bunch of ideas down on paper and having a good time doing it. And
it's fun with friends, and you're making stories that you'd want to read as a fan.
That's really the main thing. Isola, part of the reason it exists is that it's something that we would want to read. That's the kind of book I would want to pick up.
So the big question we ask everybody that comes on, of course, what are you currently geeking out over?
Well, it is October. It's
Halloween's right
Halloween month.
Yeah.
And everything is Dracula for me right now. I mean, it's a very timely question that you asked me before. So, I have in my possession a recently acquired all-region Blu-ray player, which I have modded myself, which allows me to play the Blu-ray the British Blu-ray of Scars of Dracula that I bought last year at this time, which I've been waiting a year to watch. And I had never seen it in high definition before, and I watched that the other night, and it blew my mind. It is not the best Dracula movie.
I'm a Prince of Darkness guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a bold statement.
It's better than Satanic Rites,
True, but it's also the only Dracula movie where the main character has not a single line of dialogue.
Yeah, it's true.
But it is a cool movie.
Yeah, I like the style with the Hammer films, especially like, horror of Dracula, or I guess just Dracula, outside of the U.S. That was always there was a kind of gothic sensibility there that wasn't, and like a satanic sensibility there that they couldn't do in the 30s and all that. So that was always what I enjoyed about those films.
Keeping on this theme.
Yeah.
Because I knew why you really wanted to have me on this show is to talk about Dracula.
Yeah.
Warner Archive is finally releasing Dracula 1972 and the Satanic Rites of Dracula on Blu-ray. And 1972's been available, Dracula 72's been available in high def to stream, I think.
I think so, yeah.
But
I love the prologue to that film where they're fighting on the wagon or stagecoach. That's a good one.
It's a great prologue.
Yeah.
It's a great Dracula death.
It's arguably the best, one of the best parts of the entire Christopher Lee canon is that prologue.
Cushing is amazing in it.
Yeah.
Dracula dies well.
Yeah.
It's hard to complain.
Yeah.
But Satanic Rites has been out of copyright, right? Like it's been
that and the Golden Daughters or whatever the kind of the follow-up was
the
without
Seven
Christopher
Brothers,
Lee.
the Seven Golden.
That's what.
But I feel like that's the reason why there's never been a great copy of Satanic Rites.
Yeah.
It's always looked like garbage. So if I could say that I'm about to geek out over anything, it's finally getting to see a good-looking copy of Satanic Rites of Dracula,
Hopefully.
which I think comes out next week as we record this.
Something like that.
Or the week after that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm not geeking out about a comic right now, but it's Halloween month. Throw some horror comics at me. I got some new Junji Ito to read when I get home, but I haven't.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah.
I know there's new Witches coming out on Halloween.
Really?
Scott and Jock are doing a Halloween special.
I didn't even know that.
There you go.
Here we are sitting in the image booth. I'm embarrassed. I'm embarrassed to say I had no idea.
Well, Final Order cutoff was this past Monday, so it's not like it hasn't been necessarily trumpeted that much.
Right.
Yeah. So
okay, I'm in.
Cool. But before I return you to the wilds of New York, anything else you want to kind of plug about, Isola? And I know you've got a Kodansha book coming out, or a story in a Kodansha book coming out.
Yeah, Ghost in the Shell Global Neural Network comes out also in a week or two as we record this, near the end of the month of October. It's a cool book. Again, working with some friends, other people who have stories in it are Genevieve Valentine, Alex DeCampi, David Lopez, Milo Giannis, and I worked with Lorenzo Cicciotti, who is a genius. So the story I did looks amazing. Anyways.
Any other projects percolating? I mean,
nothing I can talk about. But yeah, Motor Crush Volume 3 is in the works, and it'll be going straight to trade.
Yep.
And
how long have you guys, you and Babs and everyone been working on that?
Since we finished Volume 2, it was straight into Volume 3.
I know, a lot of, Moonstruck is starting to go straight to trade now. A lot of Image books are kind of looking into that release model now.
Well, it just, the monthly deadline was tough on everybody, and to be frank, the trades sell like hotcakes, and the monthly issues not so much. So it just seemed like that's what the market was looking for us to do.
Yeah. But Volume 2 of Isola will be in single issue.
Yes. Volume 2 of, Isola, it still makes sense to do it as a monthly, so we just keep our eyes on the numbers and see how people want to read it. And even though Isola is more decompressed and you're getting sort of quote-unquote less story every month,
there are more silent sequences in that, yeah.
Yes. Silence is a big important part of this story, and I could talk more about that, but atmosphere, vibe, tone, silence is a real important part of that, and I think it really helps to highlight Carl's art.
That's
Carl and
fantastic.
Michelle
It's
do
gorgeous.
an incredible job on
Yeah.
it. But yeah, the announcement of issue 6 of Isola will be hitting very soon. I think it's going to be in the November previews.
Yeah, I think it's already been solicited. Yeah.
Oh, has it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there you go.
Yeah. Yep. We're going to have guests doing variant covers this time around, so it's not 2 Carl Kerschel covers. We're not going to burn the candle at both ends this time.
Especially now that he's living in Japan. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the other thing. Oh, and the big announcement with it is that we're going bi-monthly. Also to try to keep everything on track.
Sure.
That's a better way of doing it for us.
Cool.
So hopefully everyone's cool with that.
Yeah. Well, again, out in comic book stores everywhere, October 24th, and in bookstores on Tuesday, October 30th. Isola, Volume 1. You can get Volumes 1 and 2 of Motor Crush out now. And then keep an eye out in November for Isola number 6. And, Brenden, thanks again for coming on the show.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me.
Cool.